I thought violated that rule because every case I would go in and she would tell me my client could plead to the max in almost it seemed like every case I had with her, and that's not what I'm talking about. I am not saying that that would be appropriate. It's not appropriate, and I wouldn't do that. So I mean, the main things that I'm seeing in general are, I think that we have a different philosophy about criminal cases. Like I said, my philosophy is going to be, I'm going to make an offer, and it's going to be an offer I think is fair. And if the defendant doesn't like that offer and thinks I'm being unreasonable, we'll test it. We'll have a jury trial, and the jury will decide what's fair. And if, I'm trying a lot of cases at first, that's fine with me. Because I think that these are misdemeanors, but I also think that there should be consequences to most cases. By the time you come in front of me, that's a serious problem, because I also know that police don't always arrest every time either. I mean, a lot of times they will, when they're called out, they will not charge someone. They'll try and de-escalate this. They'll try and talk people down. So the cases that I'm getting are the ones that the police feel like need to go to court. And I, for the most part, support law enforcement. They have a tough job, and if they think it's important enough to bring it to court, I'm going to pursue it. And there's going to be a consequence. And the other thing that I'm going to do is probation is something that we are required to give. The statutes say the judge has to give probation if it is at all warranted. And what would warrant it would be the seriousness of the offense and the criminal history of the defendant. And these are not serious offenses, they're misdemeanors. So it's normal that a lot of them get probation.
It might be serious to the individual that's the victim.
It's very serious to the victim.
But what you're talking about is, as state law looks at it, it's not serious.
The law. Yeah. So a lot of people have expressed to me frustration, especially people going door to door, because they were involved in a case, they were a victim, and the defendant got probation. And what I have to tell them is, I have to offer probation where it's warranted, but where I think I might differ from Mr. Dean is that I think probation is a second chance, and I am fine with offering that to someone, because anybody can make a mistake. I know that from personal experience. I've made mistakes. Fortunately, I've never been charged with anything. It hasn't been that bad of a mistake, but I've had family members who've had misdemeanors. Just because somebody does something that's a misdemeanor doesn't mean that they're a bad person. Okay?
They made a bad choice.
They made a bad choice, and what I'm looking for is responsibility. If they come up to me, or their lawyer comes up to me and says she's willing to accept responsibility, this is their first offense, you're going to get probation from me. That's not an issue. But the issue becomes, if I see you again, I'm not going to be that way the next time. There's going to be some consequences involved, because I think that that's what you're supposed to do to protect the public. The consequence is, if somebody's going around and they're making mistakes over and over and over again, to me that's not a mistake.
Gotcha.
That's not a mistake.
Right. Before we finish this up, let's touch base on fiscal court again.
Okay.
Because the county attorney is there for the caucus meetings, there for the regular meetings as they're looking to make decisions. As you said, drafting, when Campbell County, we were making a switch from Boone County Detention Center to Campbell County Detention Center, that the county attorney would be involved in drafting that agreement. Yes, thank you.
Agreement.
I was like, ordinance, not right word; legislation, not right word; agreement.
It's a contract.
Yeah. So explain a little bit more how you see your role with them. Are you representing fiscal court? Are you representing the people at the fiscal court meetings? Kind of where do you stand there?
Technically, I would represent the county government. County government. The county government is supposed to represent the people. So my job is not the individuals in the county government, but the government itself, is to advise the government on how to follow the law, on what they can do that is legal or illegal, what they can do to comply with various laws and regulations that are involved in certain steps. So if the county comes to me and says, we want to, for example, that you use, we want to change jails. It's my job, to answer any questions they have. They might say, can you look into what was required for the regulations for the jails? What is required for a county of our size? Can a county of our size do this? It's my job to look those up and advise them on what they should do. Usually, of course, I've never represented a fiscal court or represented a county government before, but I have represented cities. I represented the city of Dover for a while in Mason County, and I represented the city of Butler for about a year. And that's not usually what comes up. Usually the people involved in government find that out for themselves. I've been really impressed by the way that they do their research. So usually what I ended up doing as a city attorney was advising about meetings. When can we have a private meeting? When do we have to give notice of this action that we want to take? I think when I was in Butler, we tried to annex part of 27, so I had to. That's what they want. They wanted to expand the city limits, and they asked me what they needed to do that. So it was my job to research that and give them some advice on this is what you need to do if you want to expand the city limits. So that's mostly what the county attorney does. And drafting the ordinances that they pass. That's usually what the county attorney does, and I feel like I can do that. I've talked to both David Fields and Craig Peebles. Craig and my conversations have been more general. I've been pretty specific with David about what's going on in the county and what kinds of things he feels like he would like to see from the county attorney position, and I feel like I can provide that.
Okay.
So, I think one of the big important things is advice and being present, because a lot of times when these problems pop up, they are things that, the thing you were talking about, the jail, that's a long-term thing. You come up with the idea, but you know that it's not actually going to, even if it comes to pass, it's going to take a couple of months to do that process. But a lot of times in local government, there are emergencies, things that come up, and they need an answer quickly. Can we do this? We've got to do something. And the thing I remember is when I was city attorney of Butler, there was a fire at the old elementary school there that was an apartment house.
I went to first grade there.
Yeah, well, at that time, it wasn't public housing. It was actually owned by an individual, and it was I'm trying to think of slum. It was a slum. It's looked better now because it's public housing, but the person that was running that place was not doing a good job, and there was a fire, and the fire was because of faulty wiring. It was horrible. I don't know if you remember that.
Uh-huh.
And we had to know, the city wanted to shut it down and keep people out of there until such time as they could figure out whether it was even safe. And then they called me up the night of the fire and said, how do we do this? Can we do this? Can we tell people they have to leave their home? What is our authority? Because we need to know, because the fire marshal doesn't want anyone in the building. And so, I had to drop everything I was doing and I didn't know the answer to that question. Do you know the answer to that question?
I have no clue.
I went to law school. I didn't have a class on fire emergencies. So that's what the county attorney does mostly is give advice about what the law is and what they can and cannot do, and if they want to do something, maybe how to go about it.
So, and I just want to be clear, because of course you have 5 people on fiscal court that are elected to kind of handle the managerial decisions. Right. The county attorney's role is not necessarily to give managerial advice. You may disagree with the choice they're making, but as long as it's legal, you would give them advice on the legal aspect of it, but not
Correct.
a managerial
I can't
aspect.
make policy.
Okay.
I have had some people ask me, they want to talk about county issues, and I love talking about politics, but I don't have a role in deciding what is done. My job is to advise, not to dictate. That's the elected officials who have to do that.
So you could think it's the dumbest decision in the world, but as long as it's legal, that's kind of your role to tell them whether it's legal or not, even though you think this is dumb.
No, my first sign that I ever had for my office was, I admire Abraham Lincoln a lot, so it says attorney and counselor at law underneath it, and that's an old-fashioned way, kind of old-fashioned language, but I love that language because what you're talking about is the attorney part. You said, do I have to do it? Yes, if I have to represent my client zealously. So if the county government says, do this, I have to do it the best that I can. But there's also a counselor, and that is a very important part of being an attorney as well, is giving advice. So if I think it's a really dumb idea, you better believe I'm going to tell them I think it's a dumb, because I do get to sit, the county attorney sits on the fiscal court. They don't get votes, but they sit at the fiscal court meetings, and that is a big important job too. Is if I think they're doing something dumb, to use your terminology, not mine, I am definitely going to say it. If anybody knows anybody about me, or maybe you met me, you know that what you will get from me is my honest opinion. I do not mince words. I probably wouldn't say dumb, but I would be very strongly advising against it, and I would do that as much as I could to try and persuade him to do what I think would be the better decision.
Okay.
But in the end, in the attorney-client relationship, the client is the boss. It seems the other way around because the attorney is the one doing all the talking and advising, but in the end, the client makes the call. The county has, I have to do, I am their slave in that sense. I have to do what they decide. But that doesn't mean I can't push them in a certain direction. I think I would be not doing my job if I didn't.
Okay. Now, we've kind of always finished a lot of these up with kind of the same thing. You elected, you start January 1st, 2nd, whatever the date would be. I'll ask you that question off
It's not a lot of time.
Yeah, but December 31st, 2023. Is it a 4-year term? 6 years?
It's 4.
4 years, so 2023 would be the end of the term. As you would look back, how would you want residents to look at your first 4-year term, and what would they have noticed?
Well, I think that they would notice that, my hope is that they would notice on the court record in your paper that there are a lot more people getting their probations revoked that are repeat offenders. I think that they would notice that there's probably going to be some more jury trials. I think what they would notice most of all would be, I'm planning on doing some things in the community. I've got some ideas for some new programs I would like to start. I'm already talking, actually one of them I'm going to implement whether I become county attorney or not. That I'm talking to the Cabinet for Families and Children about, and those are mostly going to be focused on drugs, because I also think it's important for the county attorney or any prosecutor to not just be active in court, but be active socially and educating the public about things that they can do. So I'm planning on doing several things. I'm planning on having some victim training courses where I'm going to have some seminars where I've talked to people about how not to be victims, how to protect yourself, in other words, from being a victim of a crime. I would like to go and talk to the teenagers and the middle school students about drugs from a prosecutorial perspective. I know that we've already got a lot of programs about that, but the programs that we have now are mostly law enforcement, and that's great. I think that children should learn not to be afraid of law enforcement, that law enforcement are their friends, and to have positive views of law enforcement. But I also think that there's a lot we can do to teach kids about drugs that we're not doing.
Okay.
So I would like to do that.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in, spending a few minutes this morning. Appreciate you sitting down, talking to you, getting to discuss with you. And I do want to apologize on camera. She let me know that twice I've added an extra T to her name. It's not Stanning, it's Sanning, S-A-N-N-I-G. So I apologize for that.
That's okay. I'm used to it. It's a weird name.
And I hate when we do those things. You would seem like that those things shouldn't slip by, and we've gotten better at making sure that they. And so when they do, it aggravates me that we've let them. And we have several people that looks at that last copy, so it aggravates me even more that it went through.
I'm really involved in document preparation a lot too. I prepare pleadings for the court, and I read everything over to try. But if I had a dime for every time I made a typo, and the difference between you and me is that the only people that read my typos are judges, and you've got everybody in the county, so yeah. I understand.
But I do want to apologize, let people know that. So, but appreciate you coming out and continuing on with our discussion.
I appreciate being given the opportunity to talk here. I have to say, I really think it's great what you're doing with
Thank
this,
you.
putting this on YouTube. That's fantastic. I'm a big newspaper person. Read the newspaper. Not enough people read newspapers anymore, and you know, you learn so much about everything reading a newspaper. So I got to give you a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
I really think it's a good thing that you're doing.
Thank you. And I'll say, don't go to YouTube and watch video. Go to our website, falmouthoutloo.com. Support your local businesses. You support us by clicking upon this and watching the video there. That helps us out. So
Sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. A lot of people don't realize that. I found out a couple people have been doing that, and it helps us to go to here. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. And we've got several city council members lined up over the next few days, and we'll have county attorney and city council coming out in that Tuesday, October 30th edition. And make sure you're getting informed, and make sure you're getting out to vote on November 6th.
Thank you.